Great. So today I wanted to just direct some thoughts and some comments and some information uh, about omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin D. As many of you know, I'm a part of a company that's called Aceli Global. We're a social sharing company. We're located here in Lehi, Utah, and we operate in various markets in the world: Korea, Mexico, Colombia. I wanted to first start by just expressing gratitude to our first responders, our healthcare providers, people who are really battling COVID-19 on the front lines. This is an, un, an unpleasant time for everyone, to say the least. But we're very grateful for people who are putting themselves at a great deal of risk. As you know, COVID-19 is not just the flu. It's something a little more serious than that. And so we just wanted to express our gratitude to those people who are making sacrifices and putting themselves at extreme risk to help minimize and mitigate the expansion of this viral pandemic. If you're curious, I'm pausing because there appears to be a little bit of a lag. But I wanted to say that this is a great time. We're all quarantined. We're all kind of shacked up in our homes, doing our best to flatten the curve and not spread the virus. And it's a great opportunity for us to dedicate time, and because that's what we have now, to getting a little better, sharpening our saws, as Stephen Covey would say, and developing new habits, new skills, or sharpening our skill sets. And this is a really great opportunity to do that. So I wanted today to dispel some myths about fats. And in particular, a specific kind of fat, fatty acids. And I want to talk a little bit today about essential fatty acids. Now, they're termed essential because they're not something that our bodies can produce. They're something that we need to include in our diet and nutrition in order for our body to assimilate them and use them in the various functions. I have listed here on this slide a general chemical structure of essential fatty acids. This is more of a 2D representation of that, and essential fatty acids consist of a couple different parts. There's this carboxyl group that's here on one tail, and then on the other tail is a methyl group, and in between are a series of carbon-hydrogen bonds. In some cases, there are double bonds in the carbons. And omega-3 fatty acids are called that because if you start here at the tail, the omega side, you go 3 bonds in, you'll see the first double bond here. And this chemical that we're looking at here is eicosapentaenoic acid. Now, essential fatty acids can come from a couple different sources. One that's really well known is seafood, and then there are also structures that come from plants. Plants produce alpha linoleic acid, and seafood, fish, fatty fish, typically there are have present eicosapentaenoic acid, docosapentaenoic acid, and docosahexaenoic acid, or EPA, DPA, and DHA. Fatty acids, there are a number of different forms of essential fatty acids. Some come from plants or seed oils, which are omega-6 fatty acids. Some meat and poultry can also provide arachidonic acid. And this shows and illustrates in a different form the different forms that come from vegetables, I shouldn't say vegetables, from plant sources, seeds, nuts, some green leafy vegetables. Alpha linoleic acid is something that can be converted into eicosapentaenoic acid through a series of transformations. EPA is typically found in, again, fish oil and krill oil, algae oil. EPA can then be converted into DHA through, again, a couple other chemical steps. This conversion from ALA to EPA is very inefficient. Only about 5% of alpha linoleic acid gets converted into EPA, which kind of lends some credence to the reason why we focused our product development on omega-3 fatty acids from fish and not necessarily from plant-based source. Now, I go back to this comment. Omega-3 fatty acids are essential, again, because we can't consume that. We don't produce them naturally in our bodies, and we need to consume them, but they're also essential in development. They're a critical factor in terms of spine and brain development and the development of the eye. And without that, babies simply don't develop and come to full term. In fact, it's estimated about 55% of preterm or natural abortions, miscarriages, are as a result of fatty acid deficiencies. And fatty acids play a pretty critical role in membrane development. They create fluidity, and we'll come back to that as why that's important in membranes, cellular membranes, as they take part of this phospholipid bilayer in cell membranes. They also produce signaling molecules, and we'll see how that can also play a new role in terms of modifying protein expression or gene expression, and they can act again as signaling molecules between different organs. Most of the time when we think of omega-3 fatty acids, we think of immediately cardiovascular protection and cardiovascular health, in part because omega-3s are have a plethora, I should say, of tons of data illustrating and demonstrating, for example, the reduction in triglycerides. There's some very prominent pharmaceutical agents that are really just enriched DHA or EPA. But there's also other but really strong benefits that you can see in terms of reduction of blood pressure over time, the reduction of thrombosis or the improvement of blood fluidity. There's also some improvements in heart rate arrhythmias and improvements in myocardial efficiency. And again, this is probably one of the best and most well-studied benefit of omega-3 fatty acids is this focus within the heart. And we'll get to what that means in terms of what amounts you need to take in order to see this this improvement in your cardiovascular health. I should note that this is not the type of supplementation that just happens overnight. It's the kind of thing that takes days to weeks to months in order for those benefits to really kick in and take place. Now, one of the things that we really like about omega-3s is its role as a signaling molecule in terms of reduction in inflammation and also the stimulation of your immune system. And here's some chemical pathways, again, highlighting linoleic acid being converted to EPA or eicosapentaenoic acid, the upregulation of COX-2 enzymes, COX-2 and cytochrome P450, also 5-lipoxygenase, which are signaling molecules to reduce or create a sort of anti-inflammatory response, and it also can also reduce the pro-inflammatory responses by mitigating some other upregulation of other enzymes and other benefits of that. One thing that's most curious, I think, is the role that we're seeing in omega-3 fatty acids in terms of cognitive or neural health. And going back to the slide I showed earlier, omega-3s, because they have these double bonds, have some more flexibility than fully saturated fatty acids. And when your phospholipid bilayer has a little more fluidity, that creates some more ability, for example, for neurons, interneural neuron plasticity. In a previous life, we did some work and collaborated with some researchers back east in New York who were looking at specifically how omega-3 supplementation could improve depression and depressive disorders. So people this was a very simple first-line adjuvant therapy, consuming fish oil supplements, and people who were in a depressed state in the course of a month to 2 months' time in supplementing with the product, started to see improvements in their mood, improvements in cognitive ability as well, and really the reduction and in some cases elimination of these depression type symptoms, excuse me. And a lot of that, again, becomes of the integration of omega-3s into this phospholipid bilayer and allowing for the brain, the ability for the brain to be a little more fluid and plastic and not necessarily so static. And that's the kind of thing that helps rewire your mind or your brain, so to speak. So kind of just a quick summary of omega-3 benefits. It starts really with your heart. And there's also, so in terms of that, what I mean is really you can see improved thrombosis, you can see improved blood pressure, you start to see improved myocardial function. With your brain and your mind, you see improved memory, cognition, and mood more than anything, just an improved mood. One thing I mentioned briefly at the beginning was the development of the use of omega-3s in terms of fetal development. And a lot of that starts with a focus on the eye and, of course, the neural system and the brain. But omega-3s are critical in terms of maintaining healthy eyes because they act as not just a potent antioxidant, but also as a lubricant. So if you struggle with dry eye syndrome, supplementing with omega-3s is a good solution to addressing that particular issue. Lastly, I just wanted to address something kind of interesting. The World Health Organization listed omega-3 deficiencies as one of the top 10 indicators for reduced mortality or the increase of shorter lifespan. And one way to think about that is how you're incorporating omega-3s into your diet. What are the sources of that? Well, we talked about fish, fatty fish, things like tuna, salmon, sardines, anchovies, or increasing that from plant-based sources. Nuts are a great source of ALA, and so if you're eating fish, let's say as an example, at least 3 to 4 times a week, it's pretty safe to say that you have a healthy omega-3 index. But if you struggle, like me, for example, I live in Utah and we're in a landlocked state. We don't really have great sources of fish here. We have a massive salt lake, the Great Salt Lake, right at our border here, and there's no fish that grows there. So one of the ways in which I can ameliorate that or mitigate this lack of omega-3 is just simply through supplementation. I mentioned earlier, we talked a little bit about dosing. In general, if you're healthy, you're eating well, you're physically active, 500 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids is a pretty sufficient dose to maintain good health. Now, if you're pregnant or lactating, you need more. You're giving to that special new person in your life some of that dietary consumption. As a preventative against cardiovascular disease or coronary heart disease, 1,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA or omega-3s per day is a really good recommended dose. Now, let's say you have elevated triglycerides, you have high blood pressure, then you start to look at dosing between 1 gram and 3 grams a day. Really, an upper limit for omega-3s is 5 grams a day. And just to give you a reference of what that would mean, I have with me a capsule of our product, omega 3+D. Oh, whoops, my fingers are right in there. Each capsule contains 500 milligrams of of fish oil, which means there are 200 milligrams of EPA and 150 milligrams of DHA. So 2 capsules if you're healthy, 4 capsules if you want to take it as preventative, and then just doing that 2 or 3 times a day if you're trying to reduce your risk factors like elevated triglycerides. Now you'll ask, what is the source of our fish oil? Well, it comes from Chile and Peru. The fish are anchovies, primarily anchovies and some sardines, but primarily anchovies. Our partner, which I'm very proud of, is very well renowned for their fishing practices. They have a certification that they're friend of the sea, meaning that they practice sustainable fishing practices. In here, you'll see this is the area where we fish, and we do it again under sustainable practices. There have been some years where both the Peruvian and the Chilean government have just prohibited fishing, and so we just move on and wait until we can go back, and the fish population has grown again, and that's a very clean portion of the ocean. I go back to this image, you can see again, not a lot of contamination. Another thing that I really like about the oil that we use is traceability. So we can trace through NMR techniques precisely which lot and from where, and we can make sure that we're again the fish that we're using are coming from fresh, clean lots, and we have full traceability. It's not just our fish just thrown into a mishmash and who knows what you're getting, but we can actually trace again through NMR techniques precisely when when that fish was caught and um, which lot it was processed through. It goes without saying that the oil is extremely highly refined, distilled many times over. Um, we go above and beyond any sort of regulations, meeting regulations. We have very low heavy metal contamination, very low aromatic contamination as well. And one of the real benefits that you'll see as you consume the product is you don't have the so-called fish burps that come from consuming fish oil. And that's really because the oil, again, is processed under nitrogen, and surface environments, excuse me, and that keeps the oil in a reduced state and it's not oxidized. And you'll see as oil undergoes oxidation, it starts to discolor, and you do start to experience that kind of burpy funkiness in your gut when you're consuming it. It's kind of gross. But you don't have that. You don't have that with our product, and that's a really great thing. They come packaged in these little pearls, super easy to consume. You can puncture the capsule, mix it in yogurt if you want, or I had the pleasure of meeting these two cute little kids in Monterrey last month, and they just consume the oil, pop it in their mouths, break the capsule open. There's a little bit of a lemon flavor, a lemon oil that we infuse with the fish oil, in part to give it kind of a clean, light lemon flavor experience. And so if you want to just chew the chew the capsule like it's chewing gum, or spit it out, you can do whatever you want. All right. Now, one of the things that we have done is combined another fat-soluble steroid hormone called vitamin D. Now, vitamin D comes in primarily two different forms. Ergocalciferol, which is the form of vitamin D that's found primarily in mushrooms and plant-based sources, and cholecalciferol, which is found again in fatty fish, egg yolks, and other things. Our body has this amazing ability to produce vitamin D as a result of taking in sun ultraviolet radiation. And this goes through a series of processes of steps where you absorb UV radiation in your skin. This 7D hydrocholesterol is then converted to pre-vitamin D3, simplified form of saying a simplified form of vitamin D3 or cholecalciferol, which is then taken to the liver, and then the liver is converted into what's primarily found 25 hydroxy vitamin D3 or calcidiol, and in the kidney it undergoes one more, which is 1-alpha-25 dihydroxy vitamin D3 or calcitriol. When we examine, and this is a little bit older data, but when we look and examine vitamin D3 serum levels, and we're looking primarily at this 25 hydroxy vitamin D in the blood, we see that quite a few people are deficient in vitamin D. And there's a variety of reasons. In the United States, for example, we live at slightly larger, I should say larger, more northern latitudes. We're just not exposed to the sun as other countries maybe that are right by the equator. We also live indoors mostly, where most of us are working in offices, or we're not outside and taking in vitamin D, or the sun, and producing vitamin D naturally. And so overall, as a population, we're very deficient in vitamin D. And you can go to a lab, request a really simple serum test, and it can show you where you are in terms of the serum levels of this metabolite of vitamin D. I picked this out. This is for a later conversation, but the situation to our partners and friends down south in Mexico is equally poor. 43% of Mexicans right now are vitamin D deficient. And so where do you get vitamin D? Well, not unlike omega-3 fatty acids, we find a lot of vitamin D in similar sources. We can get them again from eggs, from dairy, fish, fatty fish. Certain types of mushrooms produce vitamin D, although it's not D3, it's D2. Beef liver is a great source of vitamin D, and of course, clearly the simplest way is just getting some sun, going out and getting some sun. And today, more than anything, this is a really simple activity. Since we're all quarantined, we can all go out and take 25, 30 minutes of walking around. Hopefully it doesn't snow in your area like it did last night for us. Kind of a weird way to introduce spring, but that's Utah for you. And to get some sunshine, allow your body to naturally produce that. But if you find that that's a difficult thing, or you're sensitive, you don't want to burn, supplementation is a great way to do it. Now, why is vitamin D so critical? Well, as with many things, we find as we look back in time, there are kind of anecdotal ways in which we discover certain things, and we find like people that suffered with rickets, for example, or this brittle bone syndrome, were really deficient in vitamin D, and by adding vitamin D, this improved calcium absorption. So I'm showing here just a really simple schematic of how vitamin D is a critical kind of gatekeeper to bone fortification, and really this is just through the calcium homeostasis by improving calcium absorption within bone, kind of osteoclast and bone tissue. How vitamin D takes that from the small intestines and then funnels that into the bone. Vitamin D is critical again and essential to improving and maximizing your calcium absorption. And again, the impact of that is really on strengthening different bone tissue. Here, I wanted to talk about something I posted in our private Facebook group, We Are Sealy. So vitamin D is actually involved in a number of different genetic modifications. It's many of these genes that are modulated and modified by vitamin D actually reside within the immune system. And so I just want showing here how vitamin D can bind and then affect different the transcription of different target genes through its assimilation into, in this particular case, renal cells or your kidney cells, and how that can then have a cascading effect into other parts of your health. And then primarily in this particular case, I really want to highlight how vitamin D, Michael Hullock and back east did some really nice work showing how vitamin D is really kind of this key sensing, activating molecule for your immune system. And we highlighted a recent publication of how supplementation or vitamin D, kind of a vitamin D index, can affect your ability to fight off influenza or other respiratory viruses. In fact, if you're vitamin D deficient, you can improve your ability to fight off respiratory viruses pretty significantly, and even healthy people can improve their chances by 10% by doing that. And you might ask, well, how much vitamin D should I be supplementing? And really, you see a really good ability to impact and improve your blood your serum levels of vitamin D by dosing at about 2,000 IUs a day. And that's a result of taking 4 capsules of omega-3 plus D each day. Each capsule contains 500 IUs of vitamin D3 per capsule. So you can now just measure and dose accordingly. If you want to get 2,000 IUs, that's 4 capsules. And if you need more than that, then obviously you can add more than that by 500 IUs per capsule. We talked a little bit last week about the ability of probiotics to stimulate and to upregulate and activate your immune system, and vitamin D is a critical component of your immune system. And so putting yourself in a better situation, again, this is the total disclaimer that you don't cure yourself of corona or COVID-19, but you can certainly put yourself in a much better situation to battle that if that time should ever come. So just as a review, what we see with omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin D, first of all, they're fat soluble, they're a perfect blend together. They support a healthy heart, they support a strong active immune system. They're anti-inflammatory and reduce inflammation. Each serving of 4 capsules contains 800 milligrams of EPA, 600 milligrams of DHA, and 2,000 international units of vitamin D. Now, if you're interested in getting or trying the product, you can always contact the person who invited you to the seminar. You can visit us at aceliglobal.com. We have a lot of different avenues in which we can help you get to that point. And now, if you have any other questions, feel free to, again, let me know through the chat, and we can answer any of those questions and get some more information into your hands. This is amazing how we can utilize and talk and share ideas and really share valuable information about really simple ways in which